Hello folks, today we're going to start working on the KZ650 cylinder head. And what I'm going to do first is clean each of the combustion chambers and remove the valves, try to figure out what's going on and why those two cylinders, the valves are not sealing. I suspect it's due to carbon buildup. If you look at the far left combustion chamber in this shot right here, you'll see it's very black. In fact, both of the combustion chambers in the video right now are very black. They're full of carbon. And I suspect what's happened is carbon is built up under the valve seat and is preventing one or two of the valves in each of those cylinder head, or combustion chambers rather, from sealing properly. I started the process over here. You can see the one furthest to the right. I've already cleaned that up, and in fact the exhaust valve right here I've already had out just to take a look at the valve seat. This is not going to be a classic valve job that many people would think of in terms of removing the valves, grinding the seats, grinding the valves. I don't think I'm going to have to get into that level of detail, but I am going to do a light lapping of the valves and clean up the chambers and see if I can't get them to seal then, and I'll test for that when I'm done. So I'm working from right to left. The one on the far right has already been cleaned up. You notice I did leave the spark plugs in while I'm cleaning the combustion chamber to prevent carbon from getting down into the fins and down, and just prevent from spreading the carbon and the contamination further. Once I have all four of them cleaned, then I will remove the valves and start the process of lapping the valves, inspecting them, replacing the oil seals on the top end. We'll get into that at a later date. And then it'll be a process of verifying it worked, that is the lapping, and putting it back together. Before we get to that though, I'm going to do a little bit of a video here on the tools that I'm going to use to address the basic cleanup. As you see in the picture here, these are the basic tools I'm going to use for this particular cleanup job. There's a lot of ways one could go about this. I'm going to use a Dremel tool with wire brush attachments, and I might use a little bit of the wire brushes that you see in the far left. You could do a lot of different things. Use wooden popsicle sticks as scrapers. I generally avoid using metal scrapers for something like this when I'm simply removing carbon, because the potential is you could damage the combustion chamber that is aluminum, and if you get too aggressive you could scar it, which I don't want to do, and it's really not necessary to get too overly aggressive. So I'm going to start with the corded Dremel. Love those things, they're great tools. You can see the wire brushes in the video there. These two are steel. They're wire. They're very, very fine. This one happens to be brass, which tends to be my favorite because it's soft, particularly something like this. And these are the new unopened packages that I have here. These tend to be sacrificial for a job like this, that being that as you use them they will deteriorate and the wires will actually separate from the wheel itself. Because of that, one needs to be very careful about wearing eye protection. In fact, I even recommend full face shield, because you will get wires quite often. They'll fly up and hit you in the face. So be forewarned. I never use one of these tools, one of these brushes in the Dremel without at minimum a good pair of safety glasses. I wear prescription glasses, and I put safety glasses over the top of my prescription glasses, and again, quite often when I'm using these I'll even use a face shield. So I'll start with the brass and work my way that way. I already started cleaning the cylinders again, or the combustion chambers. I already basically prepared this one with a wire brush. I use the brass on this. I use the steel just to give you an example of it. It can work, that being the steel wire brush that would look something like this. With care, you can use the steel because it's very, very fine, but again, my preference would be brass. The two cylinders to the left I have not prepared yet, so I'll be starting on this one, the number 3, next. This was one of the two that I confirmed was leaking, and then I'll move my direction obviously this way. So I'm going to use the Dremel with the brass wheel, clean it up, then I'll move over and I'll use the Dremel with the wire wheel, the steel wheel, and clean that up. When I'm all done, I will very likely take it outside and finish it up with a soda blaster to give the whole surface a nice clean appearance and a nice consistent patina. One might ask why I didn't use a soda blaster right up front, and one could do that. That would have been an option. However, since the carbon was pretty thick, it was built up pretty heavily, I didn't want to waste the soda media, so I'm going to use this relatively delicate mechanical method first to get the worst of it out, and then I'll come back and finish it off with a soda blaster, and it's less wasteful of the media. While I've got you in the shot, I thought I would show this is the number 1 exhaust. That's this valve right here. I already have removed it. You can see the double springs, the keeper, those kind of things. We'll go through that in more detail at another time, but this valve actually right now is loose, and I've actually already lapped it in, but I'll have to do that on all the rest of them as we go forward. But this is a valve of components for this one right here. So I'm going to go ahead now with the brass wire wheel and the Dremel, start cleaning up this combustion chamber. Again, note that the spark plug I've left intact. The valves, I've not disassembled anything on the top end of the valve, so they're pulled tight by the springs. You don't need to use a lot of pressure. That's not what this is about. I'm not going to clean the valves themselves right now. I'll do the valves separate after I pull them from the head. There's really no trick to this. You want to avoid touching the spinning collet here against the cylinder head, obviously. I've now completed the cleaning of each of the combustion chambers. Again, the intent was to get most of the carbon out. I used the brass on this one, steel on this one. The next step will be to take it outside, use the soda blast tank, and clean the entire cylinder head, including the fins, the combustion chambers, and everything else, and get it to a consistent patina and look. I'm not going to try to restore it to new. I'm going to try to make it look like it would match the rest of the bike. Once I've got it all cleaned, then I'll come back and start removing the rest of the valves, and we'll be lapping those in, each one of them. This one I've started on, this one I have to do, and then I'm going to work my way from right to left.